Most final words reflect quiet, ordinary regrets. Many mourn lost loves or paths they were too afraid to take. Occasionally, a dying declaration shatters the silence of a forgotten crime. Today, we examine 6 cases where a final breath solved a cold case. In 2009, 58-year-old James Brewer suffered a stroke and confessed. Medical staff had informed him that his outlook was grim. Facing death, in Tennessee, he sought to purge his soul before his end. This led detectives to his bedside to hear of a 1977 murder. Decades earlier, he was arrested for shooting Jimmy Carroll in Tennessee. Reports state Brewer gunned down Carroll at a gas station, then fled. He suspected the victim had tried to seduce his wife. After jumping bail, Brewer and his wife, Dorothy, vanished from the state. Missing records leave the nature of her initial charges a mystery. The fugitives reached Texas, where Brewer assumed a fraudulent identity. They settled in Oklahoma as the Andersons, where he worked for years. By his confession, the couple had built a respectable, quiet life. They were active church members who saw their daughter graduate college. She had children of her own, never knowing the relatives they abandoned. Brewer confessed thinking death was near, but fate had other plans. His unexpected recovery allowed Tennessee authorities to move forward with charges. In March 2010, London police forced entry into a home. A tip had recently alerted them to a body hidden there. An investigator later recalled discovering a roll of old floor padding. Beneath plastic and carpet lay skeletal remains in a fetal position. The victim's feet were tied, the body buried under a concrete patio. Investigators tracked the owner, Roy Heath, to a local hospice. Suffering from terminal cancer, he faced 4 days of intense questioning. He eventually identified the victim as Muhammad Taki, murdered in 1998. Taki had been missing since early 1998, last seen that January. Despite the confession, forensic teams still needed to confirm the identity. DNA tests involving a sister in Baghdad failed to yield results. Regional conflict prevented gathering samples from his other siblings in Syria. Old medical records were eventually used to confirm the victim's identity. A friend collapsed when shown a hat found in the shallow grave. With the motive unknown, authorities officially declared the investigation closed. Muhammad's killer, Roy Heath, died 13 days after his confession. In 1998, a girl's remains were found behind a Chicago apartment. Her final moments had been marked by extreme violence. A prior head injury left her jaw broken, making eating impossible. This matched the coroner's findings of severe malnutrition and stunted growth. Her actual cause of death was far more brutal. Someone had crushed her torso so violently that she could not breathe. Clues were limited to pajamas manufactured only in 1968. Investigators had almost nothing until a former neighbor shared a horrifying story. This witness revealed dark secrets about the family living in the adjacent building. Vera Rodriguez came forward as a crucial witness. At 12 years old, she recalled the haunting sounds of a child's agony echoing from a neighboring apartment in 1969. Seeking answers from her mother, she was met with a stern command to remain silent. Vera lived in constant fear for the unseen victim, sensing a perpetual nightmare unfolding within those walls. She informed investigators that the victim's parents were named Joan and Tom and mentioned a younger brother. Guided by this lead, detectives combed school archives for Buckingham Place residents, eventually identifying a boy named Scott Blake. This child lived at West Buckingham with Joan and Tom Blake. Though Tom was dead, Joan had remarried, becoming Joan Miller in Nebraska. Authorities later secured birth certificates confirming that a daughter, Holly Lee Blake, was born in 1962. Perplexingly, no academic footprint existed for the child. Despite being 7 when she died, her only paper trail was that birth certificate. Investigators confronted Joan Miller regarding her daughter, but she adamantly denied the girl's very existence. Within a week, word reached officials that Miller was hospitalized, battling congestive heart failure. They arrived in March 2000, witnessing a confession as Miller lay hooked to a ventilator. Mute and fading, she responded to the detectives' binary questions with only slight nods or shakes. The interrogation revealed that Miller had personally ended her daughter's life, disposing of the body near the apartments without her husband's knowledge. Police immediately secured a DNA sample. The results matched Holly's remains. While her motive remained shrouded in mystery, the investigation is now concluded. 6 days after confessing, Joan Miller was dead. Karen Summers. 19-year-old Karen Summers, a young mother, was murdered during a drive-by shooting at a Tulsa house party on September 10, 1994. This violence was allegedly fueled by the bitter rivalry between the Bloods and the Crips. A .380 caliber round struck Karen in the back, ending her life before paramedics could arrive. Investigators targeted Michael Lee Wilson, who possessed a .380 pistol and a maroon vehicle matching witness descriptions. He avoided charges by shifting the blame onto two teenage boys. 17-year-olds DeMARCO Carpenter and Malcolm Scott became the primary focus of the investigation. Despite a total lack of forensic evidence, Wilson initially agreed to testify, only to recant before the trial began. 4 months after his release, Wilson brutally murdered his 30-year-old co-worker, Richard Yost, bludgeoning him with a baseball bat. While he faced execution, 2 key witnesses admitted their testimony against the teens was false. Despite the evidentiary vacuum, a jury convicted the pair, sentencing them to life plus 175 years. 2 decades passed before Wilson confessed on January 7, 2014, only 2 days before his scheduled execution. He claimed responsibility for the murder, expressing shock that authorities released him despite finding the weapon in his possession. He identified 2 accomplices from that night, both of whom were already imprisoned for unrelated killings. He maintained that Karen Summers wasn't the target, merely an innocent person caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. After this admission, Malcolm and DeMARCO were finally exonerated and released in 2016. Sigrid Hagim and Torren Finstad. Fritz Moan was born in Sarpsborg on December 17, 1941. Born deaf and partially paralyzed, he was surrendered to an orphanage in 1943 when his mother felt unable to provide care. His father perished during the war in 1944, having never laid eyes on his son. His life spiraled in the 1970s when he was accused of the brutal assaults and murders of 2 women in Trondheim. His first purported victim was identified as Torren Finstad, who vanished on October 4, 1977, only to be found 2 days later, strangled and sexually assaulted. Fritz faced indictment the following spring, leading to a May conviction and a sentence of life imprisonment. However, a successful appeal by his defense team eventually reduced the term to 16 years. By 1981, he faced new charges for the cold case of Sigrid Hagim, discovered dead in September 1976. The assailant tried to sexually assault her before finally taking her life by strangulation. By December 1981, Fritz faced a conviction for the homicide, adding 5 years to his sentence. Records suggest his confession was likely extracted through heavy-handed intimidation tactics. Additionally, his struggle to communicate effectively likely contributed to what authorities labeled a voluntary admission of guilt. A disturbing anomaly surfaced when forensic samples gathered and analyzed at the scene mysteriously vanished or were intentionally destroyed years later. No one knows who compromised the evidence or why it was discarded. Fritz languished behind bars for decades, even as his lawyers argued that a profound judicial failure had occurred. On January 2, 2000, the defense finally secured a retrial for both counts. Yet, proceedings for the initial trial didn't actually commence until 2004. A fresh presiding judge overturned the verdict, clearing Fritz of all charges involving Sigrid Hagim. Although the court acknowledged that forensic findings cleared his name, they noted that the original conviction lacked merit due to overwhelming reasonable doubt. Fritz had a solid alibi, and the scene suggested Sigrid was hunted, subdued, and bound using her own garments. Fritz's partial paralysis meant he was physically incapable of committing such a violent act. Tragically, Fritz passed away in 2005 while his second appeal was still pending. His legal team continued the fight in his memory. As his innocence was gradually recognized, a chilling void remained. Who actually murdered Sigrid and Torren? 9 months later, in December 2005, a dark truth emerged regarding Hepso, a man with a violent past. Faced with his own mortality, in December 2005, he admitted to the brutal attacks on both Torren Finstad and Sigrid Hagim. Hepso bared his soul to a priest, but when law enforcement finally received word, his health failed, and he died before police could question him. By August 2006, Fritz was officially exonerated for the Finstad murder. Judges observed that Fritz's coerced confession contained nothing but facts already circulated in the media, yet the specific insights provided by Hepso pointed directly to his own involvement at the scenes. 26-year-old Margaret Cook saw her life cut short in 1946. Working as a dancer in London's Soho district, she was gunned down in a dark alleyway behind her workplace. Initial investigations yielded frustratingly few leads for the Metropolitan Police. Bystanders recalled a medium-built suspect in his late 20s wearing a raincoat and a distinct dark pork pie hat. Despite a brief foot chase, the killer vanished into the Oxford Street station crowds, leaving the case cold for decades. In 2015, a 91-year-old nursing home resident in Canada confessed to the killing following a terminal diagnosis. Insiders claim he simply couldn't bear to face death with such a heavy secret on his soul. Once Canadian officials heard the admission, they immediately contacted the authorities back in London. Detectives traveled across the Atlantic to interview him. While her name had escaped his memory, he identified Margaret from a series of vintage photographs depicting women from that era. He confessed to shooting her outside the Blue Lagoon Club on Carnaby Street over a financial dispute. The weapon used, he claimed, was a Soviet handgun dating back to World War II. Even though British prosecutors filed formal charges and sought his extradition, reports from 2015 suggest the Canadian government was slow to respond. Doubts lingered regarding his health for travel or trial. Consequently, the man's identity remains shielded from the public eye. This admission, coming 70 years after the fact, represents the longest delay in a confession within British legal history. Those are the documented facts. Share your theories and reactions in the comments section below. Like and subscribe to support our investigative work on this channel. Thanks for watching. Keep your eyes open, stay secure, and we will see you soon. There is a profound, haunting weight to a person's final words. They are more than just a last breath. They are the ultimate reckoning between a soul and the silence of eternity. As we journey through these stories of cold cases solved by deathbed confessions, we are reminded of a powerful, universal truth. The conscience is a relentless witness. You can outrun the law for decades, change your name, and hide in the shadows of a new life, but you can never truly escape yourself. These cases teach us that justice is not merely a legal outcome, it is a moral necessity. Whether it takes 13 days or 70 years, the truth has a way of clawing its way to the light, demanding to be heard before the door of life closes forever. Let these stories serve as a solemn reminder of our shared humanity. They urge us to live with integrity, for the secrets we keep eventually become the chains we carry. In the end, we all seek peace, but peace is only found when the burden of the past is laid down. Seek the truth, honor the innocent, and remember that it is never too late to do what is right. Your legacy is defined not by what you hid, but by the courage it took to finally speak.